When we look at the big media companies in the United States, the ones that control the major broadcast news divisions and print news divisions, increasingly, there's only a handful of them. We got to remember a couple things about them to put the news and the content into context. First of all, we see that the largest U.S.-based media firms, the conglomerates, all look at the area outside the United States as their growth zone. The thing to get Sumner Redstone waking up in the middle of the night, or Rupert Murdoch in the middle of the night, in a cold sweat, is the thought of China or India, markets of 1 billion people that are growing rapidly economically. And if you can get them consuming advertising and media consumption anywhere close to the rate of the United States or Western Europe, you're looking at growth rates that are going to be astronomical for a generation. That's the future for these firms. What's striking about this, though, as these companies move around the world and try to improve their chances and change copyright laws and trade laws to make it easier for them to dominate commercial media markets worldwide and buy up stuff, they find there's one institution that is their number one protector, one institution that leads the fight for them, that is their Knights of the Round Table for corporate media expansion, and that's the U.S. federal government. The U.S. government at every turn leads the fight for these companies so they can expand their holdings in other countries, so the media in other countries can be more owned by transnational firms, can be more commercialized, U.S. firms can advertise there more easily. Across the board at every point. Well, this creates a spectacular conflict of interest, if you think about it, in the coverage of all sorts of issues. Global trade, for example, where these companies have a decided stake. The global trade laws be shaped to encourage private investors and big firms to own whatever they want without any local regulation or prohibition. It's very unlikely to think you're going to see General Electric's NBC doing hard-hitting critical analysis of global trade deals. Their future depends on it economically. It's just not what you would rationally expect. Television is the place where most people look for news. I mean, what we see strikingly, and the research shows this, is that you can have all sorts of interesting stories in print. Sometimes, like in the case of the war in Iraq, in the run-up to the election day, you saw in our print media in the United States, in the Washington Post and New York Times, lots of stories about how the situation in Iraq was a complete fiasco. I mean, crime, graft, the bottom had come out of the cup, and virtually everything the president had said about it was wrong. And if you read the newspapers, regularly, you would very easily come to that conclusion. The president is simply full of it. This war is a fiasco. Yet if you were to watch broadcast news, and especially cable TV news during the same period, you would not have reached that conclusion, because it was presenting, again, a video version sort of sanitized by the Bush administration that showed a war that, for every time they showed something remotely critical, they felt an obsession to show something to balance it that was pro-war. But television is the final end product where people learn about the world much more than print for the vast majority of people. And that's not going to change. We're audiovisual species. We respond to pictures and images and sound much more than print. Print is a hard thing for people to grasp. Video, audio isn't. It's part of our being as our nature as human beings. That's not going to change. TV journalism is going to be the center of journalism for the foreseeable future, for the foreseeable generation or two. Even in the digital era, that will not change either. It might be over the internet that people are getting a lot of it, but it's going to be what we consider TV journalism. I think that independent world television plays a real central role in where ideally our media system would go in the United States and globally. Crucially, what we need to have, the core of any vision of a good media system is that it's going to be pluralistic and heterogeneous. And that's the best possible media system, one with a number of different institutional setups that's going to be much less likely for anyone in power ever to control it. Much more likely that dissonant ideas can get to the top. The truth will win out in the classic case of a marketplace of ideas, because it'll be harder to snuff out the various sources of inquiry. That's where independent world television plays a central role, because it can be one of those cornerstones, one of the legs of a democratic media system. It can be something independent of government, independent of commercial pressure. There is one of the ways to provide high quality, serious political public affairs coverage of the world, and be there then as a constant, not just an alternative voice, an independent voice, but as also a check then on the other three legs at the table.